sometimes in politics, particularly Australian politics, if you ask me, things happen when you have to take a step back, look at everything, and appreciate, wow, this is so stupid. There are times when, history is being made, decisions are being made that will affect the country, the world, for decades, if not centuries to come, and actors in the system, liberals, will make some of the worst decisions imaginable and blow away your already completely, utterly, pathetically low expectations of them. I woke up mad about this. Still, I've got bedhead. I'm not in the best position to be making long political rants, but I'm going to do it anyway because of how infuriatingly stupid the last 2 days have been over this one particular issue. So if you missed it, the Australian government officially made the move to recognise Palestine as a state in September at the UN General Assembly. And that is a massive step for Australia's international relations. It brings us in line with the majority of countries on Earth, and it's part of a coordinated effort by a lot of Western countries, including France, Canada, the United Kingdom, to try and recognise a Palestinian state while we still can, and recognising a state that will have no governance whatsoever from Hamas, will be administered completely by the Palestinian Authority, and the hope is that by projecting that vision, that will put pressure on the Israelis to accept that that is what has to become reality, and also put pressure on Hamas and make them realise that the game is up for them and they have no future in a Palestinian state. Now, recognition of Palestine is a big deal, and it's something you only get to do once. And to nobody's surprise, the Liberal Party had a little bit of a tantrum about it. They said it was premature, it was potentially emboldening terrorists, that being Hamas, and that if they got back into power in 2028, that they would reverse that recognition of the state of Palestine. So, the Liberal Party, seeking to reform under Susan Ley and try and appeal to a younger Australia, a more diverse Australia, their first 2028 campaign is to roll back recognition of Palestine. I think Albo's going to be okay in 2028, I'll be perfectly honest. But that's not what's been pissing me off. The Liberals rolling back recognition of Palestine, probably always going to happen given how much they are held hostage by their right-wing faction, even though Susan Ley, I just want to make clear, was a member of the Parliamentary Friends of Palestine movement, and in 2008 was actually removed from an official parliamentary meeting because in 2008 she said that Kevin Rudd wasn't doing enough for the Palestinian people and was yelling about UN resolutions. Look that up. She genuinely got removed because of how vocal she was about her support for Palestine, despite the fact she is clearly rolled over for her right-wing faction and is just a shadow of what she once was, if that was even impressive to begin with. No, what bothered me was what came next over some very, very confusing news. In the days following the recognition by Australia, or rather the announcement of intent to recognise in September, some journalist in Australia reached out to Hassan Youssef, a leader of Hamas, a man who is at times referred to as a co-founder of Hamas, reached out to him through some channels and asked, what do you think of Australia's recognition of Palestine? And apparently a statement was issued in which direct praise was given by this Hamas leader, by Hassan Youssef, to Albanese for his political courage, and basically massively endorsed it and said that this was a great step forward. And that kind of set off a bit of a media firestorm because apparently, according to this journalist's sources, a leader in Hamas was saying that Anthony Albanese was doing great things. And that, of course, set a lot of people off because, is Hamas now endorsing Albanese's plan for Palestine? Is a terrorist organization endorsing the Labour Party? And look, on the face of it, that was very confusing because, look, the plan for Palestine that Australia was engaging with, that their idea of recognition would be one in which Hamas was completely disarmed and removed from any form of governance. So it was a little bit confusing, but people ran with it, including the opposition itself. The Liberals had a field day. Michaelia Cash came out and said that this was evidence of an appalling decision by the government that is emboldening terror groups and is a massive propaganda victory for Hamas. Susan Ley said something to a similar effect. I believe the term she used was cheerleading, that if terrorist organizations are cheerleading Australia's foreign policy, that means that the government has done something wrong, and we need to walk back this recognition of Palestine. Now, Albo's response to this was pretty muted to an extent, basically him saying, look, Hamas is a terrorist organization, and then something to the effect of, they have competent propaganda, be very skeptical of stuff like this, okay? And it turns out that was actually pretty good advice, because Hamas itself actually made a statement about this. They have an English Telegram channel through which they make official announcements, and soon after this alleged personal support by a co-Hamas founder for Albanese and his character and his courage, the Hamas official Telegram account said that statement did not come from Hassan Youssef. The reason that Hassan Youssef, according to Hamas, did not make that statement endorsing Anthony Albanese is due to the fact that he's been in prison, an Israeli prison, since 2023 and has no access to the media whatsoever. So to try and clear this whole mess up, the Australian Financial Review, that was not involved with the original reporting, reached out to Bassem Naim, who is kind of a spokesperson for Hamas. He's a former health minister in Gaza, and he's kind of a go-to to kind of like clear up some of the, as you can imagine, very confusing media reports that do come out of Gaza because of just how difficult it is to get information out. So they went to him and they asked, like, can you help clear this up? Like, what exactly has happened? Has Hamas directly endorsed Anthony Albanese and talked about his political courage? And the answer was just no. No such statement was made by Hamas itself saying that Anthony Albanese had political courage and like bordering on like a thank you for his support. No such statement was issued by Hamas. And when the original reporting that said that that statement was made then clarified to say that it didn't come from Hassan Youssef, it came from his office that makes statements for him since he's in prison, well, the Australian Financial Review asked about that too in this interview. And the Hamas official said he doesn't have an office. He's been in prison for 2 years. He was rounded up in the aftermath of October 7th by the Israelis, and he's had no ability to speak to the media. And he doesn't have a press office. Now, that Hamas official did say that they welcome any support for the Palestinian people, but also with the caveat that there was no personal praise for Australia's political leadership or Albo himself, and then kind of clarified that there needs to be real action. So the tone coming from actual Hamas officials was, yes, supporting the Palestinian people is good, but we actually need real methods to get Israel to abide by international law. In layman's terms, yeah, recognition's great, but what are you actually going to do about it? Okay, so water's getting a bit murky. Let me try and summarize the situation so far. So, some Australian media outlets allegedly get access to a statement from Hassan Youssef, a co-founder of Hamas. And that statement is basically praising Anthony Albanese for his decision to recognize Palestine. And that statement goes so far as to say that he shows great political courage. People in the Australian media, of course, jump on this. You have Hamas, a terrorist organization, putting together what is seemingly like a whole article of just Albo is the best, according to these sources, and then running with it. The opposition runs with it. They attack Labour on it. But then we have Hamas itself coming out and saying, actually, the man that allegedly made that statement is in prison, cannot issue statements, and he doesn't even have a so-called media office to make this statement for him. So we're kind of just in this weird spot where it's like, where the hell did this original claim come from? Okay, so here's the most positive interpretation I can think of. Best case scenario for the original statement that was apparently made by Youssef to the Australian media. And that is, At this point in the war, it's possible that Hamas is so fractured after all this fighting that their organizational structure is falling apart, and someone within the organization is making statements on behalf of Yusuf without clearing them with Hamas leadership itself, and is then just like throwing that at the Australian media. And in that case, the statement really means nothing. If that is the case, then what has happened is that somebody claiming that they have the authority to speak on behalf of a Hamas co-founder has just made a statement, but has done so without any actual support from Hamas itself. So then it's kind of a non-story if that's the reality of the situation. Now, I'm not going to use this platform to attack journalists. It's entirely plausible that in a situation as chaotic as the Middle East, that one of some paper's sources let them down and made a false statement despite being previously reliable. It's entirely plausible. What I'm not going to let slide, however, is how stupidly the opposition reacted to this and how quickly they jumped onto it without even waiting like a day and a half for any more confirmation on it. Like I said before, Australia gets one opportunity to recognize Palestine, to come in line with a majority of countries across the world. And the Liberal Party is not only kicking and screaming, they are throwing out accusations of the government's foreign policy like benefiting terrorists and throwing just about everything they can at the government, every piece of mud, no matter how questionable, at the government to try and start a political shitstorm so this doesn't happen. And it's so fucking embarrassing. Do you know what Susan Ley said when this information was presented to her? The possibility that praise of Albo by Hamas was actually false and potentially not verifiable? She said that she is not responding to comments made by Hamas, nor is she taking them seriously. Okay, so when you get one source that is a day old, which claims that a co-founder of Hamas, who's been in prison for 2 years and can't speak to the media, has released a statement through an office that Hamas says doesn't even exist, that they are praising Anthony Albanese for his decisions, you're going to go up and say, oh, see, this is perfect evidence. This is evidence that Hamas is cheerleading Anthony Albanese's decision-making. And that is terrible for Australia. He is emboldening terrorists. But when Hamas itself verifiably says that that statement was not made, oh, Hamas, you can't trust the word they say. Are we fucking serious? There's a reason why the Liberal Party is polling at 43% in the two-party preferred. There's a reason why they're going backwards. It's because they don't fucking stand for anything. Susan's given up on every principle she had to become leader of the Liberal Party for the next 3 years, or until someone from the right faction knifes her and takes over. They're just opposition for opposition's sake. And sure, that can work. It worked great for Tony Abbott, but he had an incompetent Labour Party at the helm, which went from Rudd to Gillard to Rudd, which was tearing itself apart. For the first time since, probably the Bob Hawke era, we have a Labour Party that isn't tearing itself apart at the seams every chance it has. And you know what the Liberal Party is in response? Incompetent and forgettable. Look, it's easy to dunk on the Liberal Party, and it's borderline beating a dead horse, making fun of them at this point. But I want competent opposition. Every government needs that. But we don't have that at the moment. We have a Liberal caucus, which is just a kids' playroom of people throwing tantrums and saying how bad the government is, despite the fact the government is extremely popular at the moment. I've got criticisms of Albo, but at least he's not as fucking awful as who's over there on the opposition benches. And look, if this is the way the Liberal Party is going to continue to play, being this attack dog, despite the fact that strategy of opposition for opposition's sake doesn't work in this current parliament, I hope Liberals can at least get comfortable on those opposition benches, on those seats. Because they're probably going to be there for the next 15 fucking years at this rate.